we've looked at line. I said I would show you splines. I just want to show you arcs first. So an arc is, as you would expect, you do the start point, the end point. I mean, by moving your mouse, you can create your arc, and you will see there's a text box. So that is, it's a radius because it's an arc, not a diameter, so it's a radius. So you could type in a radius and you can fix that arc there, okay? Okay, so as well as lines, lines are just as you think they are, as you expect they are straight lines, okay? By clicking this arrow, we get more options. We can have splines. So a spline is, you just draw a series of clicks and you can create this curvy line here. Okay, and then right click or click the tick to close it. Now you can see the lines we clicked were these circles. This is where we clicked our mouse. The way it's drawn this spline is to kind of interpolate between them and create a best fit curve between those lines. Okay, and you can click on the points and you can drag it. Sometimes you do want that best fit curve. Other times you actually want the curve to be on the point you've actually clicked. In which case you choose this spline here. And now, when we click, it will not only will it put the next point on the point we click to, as we draw further geometry, it will do whatever curves it needs to do to get to the next point you click. Okay? There we go. So I'm just gonna, suppose I wanted to join these up now. So I've just done that spline. Well, it doesn't look very smooth. This doesn't exactly run into there. This one looks better, but if you zoom in close, it's still not very smooth. So this was the other constraint we had, this smooth constraint. We can click that, choose our spline we want to change, and then select the geometry, and there we go. This constraint has smoothed out this curve. But we do need to do it to both sides. And there we go. So now it's done whatever it needs to do in order to make that work. So that's our smooth constraint. Okay. That's one of those things you rarely need, but when you do need it, and it is very useful. Okay. So that's splines. Equation curves. We can get into that another time or later on. That's quite advanced stuff. Bridge curve. So let's just say we have a spline here, like so, and then we have another spline here. Now I want to join these up. I'm just going to click on bridge curve, and there we do. It's done basically. And if you look at this here, it has all it has done actually is draw a spline with two smooth constraints. So what we've just done with our smooth constraint previously is done that automatically as one command. And that's what Inventor does all the time. If we go back now to drawing a rectangle, this is going to look much more familiar. All I've done is click on rectangle and drawn a rectangle. I haven't specified anything. But when we click it, you can see we have some familiar constraints here. We have a horizontal constraint, a parallel constraint, and when we hover over it, this line highlights, and a perpendicular constraint. So if ever you want to know what geometry a constraint is referring to, if you hover over it, it will say these are both green, so these are parallel. The two green lines are perpendicular. Okay, click on that line. This is parallel. This is parallel to that one, and that one is parallel So that one, okay. These lines here, these dashed lines, remember, they're construction lines. So just by drawing a rectangle, we've created all this geometry. And we've put in all these constraints. Inventor's quite clever. It will always do things with the minimum amount of work. So it only actually needed one parallel constraint. One perpendicular constraint to do this rectangle, because these lines are parallel, these lines are parallel. So all you need to do is set one angle, which is done. Then all you need to do is set one either vertical or horizontal constraint to set the rotation, and you have a fixed rectangle. The only thing that isn't fixed is the size, so by adding just dimensions as I come, that now is fixed. Okay, it's fixed in size and it's fixed as a rectangle. That's a bit like the smooth command, but what you probably realizing is a lot of these are just quick ways of doing things. A rectangle is just a quick way of drawing 4 lines with a load of constraints. And that's how Inventor works with sketches. As you draw, you will find your own way of your preferred way of working. Some people prefer to use constraints all the time. Other people prefer to use dimensions, okay? There is no real right or wrong. It's already got one, but using a parallel constraint, okay, let's delete that. It's not really different to putting a 90-degree dimension. Okay, so if you have 2 lines, using a perpendicular constraint to set that angle is no different really to putting a dimension on and calling it 90 degrees. You're still fixing that as a right angle. Some people prefer to dimension everything. Some people prefer to constrain everything. Others like to use a mixture of both. The most important thing to remember is that your geometry is fixed. That's something I want you to remember and take forward. It's fixed. Doesn't matter if you fixed it with a dimension or constraint, as long as it's fixed, because otherwise you will get all sorts of errors later on down the line. Okay, so we spoke a lot about constraints. I appreciate that might have been a bit complicated. The main thing I want you to take forward is that you know roughly what the constraints are. You know when you see a symbol that it's a constraint. You don't need to memorize every shape, because if you forgot what that shape meant, all you got to do is find it up here, hover over it, and oh yeah, it's parallel. Okay. But I just want you to first understand what these mean and why they're there, and also understand that when you draw things like rectangles, Inventor is just creating an object. It's just a shortcut to create multiple objects, to do multiple commands. Okay. Sketching is sketching in Inventor. Whether it's rectangles, lines, it's just a mixture of geometry and constraints. Okay, so I think that's enough of this chapter. It's been quite a long one. You might want to go over some of these again just to get your head around them, or you might need to go and lie down in a dark room or something. But I think we'll call this chapter there, and in the next chapter we'll look at some more of this sketch